I'm going to read the article, Why Intellectual Property Isn't Necessary to Reward Innovation by Bernardo de Coster, and this is on Mises Wire on the Mises Institute website, and it was written on January 29th of 2022. There's an extra level of retention of information when you read it, look at it with your eyes, and then you speak it out loud, you voice it, you vocalize it, and also when you hear it, you can take things in different ways. So there's going to be links where you can find this article yourself and read it for yourself and also intake it that way. And the Mises Institute has a lot of great content. I'm personally rather partial to the Mises Institute. It's helped me make sense of a lot of things. I like the Austrian way, the Austrian School of Economics, and looking at economics and other things in the world. Talk about the Rothbards, the Mises, the Hans Harmer Hoppe. There's a lot of people who come from that school, and then the more contemporary people. I guess Hoppe's still alive, but you have people like the Tom Woodses, the Robert Murphys. You might have heard of some of these people before. There's also the Mises caucus in the Libertarian Party. So some of the ideas you might have heard, it's this free market economists. And yeah, I shouldn't not forget to mention Ron Paul, Dr. Ron Paul. He's been somebody in politics, and his son is Rand Paul. I think Rand Paul is still also somewhat associated with the libertarians, at least. He definitely leans a lot more libertarian than most of the Republicans. Before continuing, I'd like to make this a bit more interactive. And these are things that I'm interested in, and I'm also interested in what y'all think about these things. So tell me, what are your thoughts about, or put it in your mind, what are your thoughts about intellectual property rights, and then see if that changes at all with the things that I say after this, my thoughts and ideas on it, and also after I read the article and then give some more thoughts and ideas about that after that. With this article, if you listen to my content at all, this is probably something that is somewhat interesting to you, and it has a lot of interest to me because for a long time I've been taking a lot of information in on this information age. The spread of information, I think, has liberated us to do so many new things. It's helped human flourishing. And there's something about intellectual property rights that, in my estimation, limits the spread of information, the spread of innovation. And it's a straightforward proposal here. If I figure out how to do X that solves Y problem in Z amount of time, and it's also something that I think other people might be able to eventually do, then if I let other people just learn from me how to do X, just do X like I do it, then more people in the world can be helped. That's more wise those things can be helped. And then all that Z time that all these other people would spend to actually find a way to do it in that way can be freed to figure out how to do ABC. That's a rather straightforward construct that we think here, but then the proposal by some people is, oh, if this person invented Z time in order to figure out how to do X to solve Y problem, we need to have a situation where we protect their ability to profit as much as possible from doing that, from inventing that thing. Otherwise, other people won't be willing to take Z amount of time in order to invest to how to fix A, B, C, D, and things like that. So with that claim, they'll say you're protecting the person who comes up with the invention, and you're also encouraging other people to invest time into trying to innovate and create new things because they understand if I do that, I'll be able to control the actual usage of this and profit the most out of this thing that I created. However, there are some issues to this. Not entirely removed from having something like the state, which is an institution that is defined by its monopoly of legal violence over any given area and peoples. And you have this institution that now gets to the situation where there's also fiat currency that they bring in. So you have a time when people start buying up a ton of intellectual property rights to certain things that they don't even plan on using. They say, this is something that we'll use eventually, or this is something that is 1% of the thing that we're creating here, but we're going to keep this, and then other people can't use this. So they start kind of having a monopoly of sorts on things, yet some people think, oh, the monopoly's not good. And another way this can be monopolized by certain kind of entities is you'll be working for a place and then you'll innovate something while working at that place through entirely probably majority of your effort. Maybe they provided you the area, they provided you some of the resources to do it, but then they own the actual thing. They say, okay, now this is ours. You can't use it. Right now in the world, there's a current pestilence of unnamed origin that's being found out, and they're talking about, okay, now that this is a life-saving thing, why do you still have the patent? Why do you still have the intellectual property rights to this different concoction of how this is supposed to protect these people? You're keeping that to yourself when you're profiting to the tune of billions of dollars and saying we're the only ones who can make this. There are some questionable things here, and I think most people would take some issue with it, but I think just in general, I think most people do support intellectual property rights, and one of the main reasons they would say, if you just kind of explained a little to them about it, would be that, oh yeah, it actually rewards people for innovating things because they have some time to profit from it right after they invent it. So now I'm going to get into the reading. I personally have interest in being able to tell stories and being able to do work. What could you tell? Could you run a business and just be 100% open? And I think you see that happening now. People running businesses and having social media presences and just being really open in the things that they're doing. Do you have to protect certain things in order to be innovative, in order to be a successful business? Or can you do something just wide open? It's like, okay, if I'm telling a story, this is the way I'm telling my story. This is the way I'm doing my work. If you want to copy, if you want to do this as well, you can do it too, but I'm doing it already. And you already have the benefit of having put that time in to innovate it at Z. And once you've put that time in, you've learned certain skills that will already put you ahead of other people who just want to copy what you're doing. Regardless, I think that's going to be something that always maintains, and that's something that I have in mind, looking forward at some of the things that I want to do, have some kind of more openness with that, and not necessarily say this is just mine and hoard it like some smog dragon over some pile of gold. And I just thought of one more thing. There's also the cutting down innovation on yourself, because if you're like, okay, I'm still profiting over this one thing that I invented, maybe if you had time to say, okay, other people are doing this too, it frees you from trying to monopolize that one thing that you invented, those few things that you might have the IP for, and it will keep your mind still innovating other things. And yes, some people might just have one invention in them in their entire life, but some people might have 20, but if they find a way to just profit over that first one or two, they won't actually get around to innovating the other 18 that they could. Okay, so let's get to the article here. The concept of a pioneer's advantage is based on a single intuitive pillar. It takes time for knowledge to spread throughout society. When an entrepreneur mixes his existing knowledge and creates a new idea, in other words, innovates, he is the one who knows best about the idea that he just invented. When materializing this idea, it is the fact that not everyone in society immediately knows about this innovation nor how it works. This gives the innovating entrepreneur a temporal head start before his competitors 1. Learn about the existence of this innovation, 2. Decide to reverse engineer it, and 3. Learn how to replicate it as effectively as him. In this way, we can indeed say that a pioneer advantage is some sort of knowledge of Cantillon effect. The Cantillon effect states that money is non-neutral, and not all society is affected simultaneously by the injection of new paper currency. Thus, when new currency is minted, it follows a certain path in the economy, benefiting the early receivers more than the late ones. The early receiver benefits because they have a head start, a temporal benefit, of spending their money at a moment when the prices have not been altered by inflation. Thus, the earlier receivers become wealthier compared to the late receivers. Similarly, when new knowledge is created, it does not impact the entirety of society at the same time. Knowledge and information are thus asymmetric in the sense that not everyone knows everything. Those who minted this new knowledge have a temporal benefit, a head start, of putting it into practice at a time when their competitors have not yet heard about it. As this new knowledge spreads through society, consumers flock to this innovative entrepreneur, and if his innovation satisfies them more than what his competitors offer, the entrepreneurs will make a profit. With this expansion of capital, the entrepreneur is able to expand operations and build more of this innovation. Losing customers to this creative entrepreneur, his competitors suffer losses. This is what Schumpeter, 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 this is what Schumpeter called creative destruction, and thus are forced by the profit and loss mechanism to seek a way to replicate the invention. This, however, takes more time, and by the time they have managed to reverse engineer it and begin building it, the entrepreneur has had considerable time and acquired enough new capital to expand his own operations and build several more replicas of his new innovation. Assuming away intellectual property, IP laws, as other entrepreneurs learn about this innovation, in other words, As the knowledge quintillion effect is spreading through society, they themselves will begin to improve this innovation in an attempt to replicate the breakthrough. When that happens, these entrepreneurs will themselves get a pioneer advantage in their own innovations. Ultimately, the consumers are the ones who benefit the most in this innovative flying circus. Society is propelled forward as entrepreneurs build on top of other innovations, create more and more knowledge, and expand more and more according on how much they satisfy the customers. This concept is extremely useful in solving one of the main objections to the repeal of intellectual property laws. When someone proposes ending laws that monopolize ideas, the very first objection raised is usually this one. Well, big corporations will just instantly copy the entrepreneur. In fact, this is one of the first arguments made by Richard Epstein in his debate against IP lawyer Stephen Kinsella. Again, might be butchering that name. Might be Kinsella or Kinsella. Yeah, let me know. And a bit on the side here, there's a link here to the actual debate of the Soho Forum debate, and this is some debates put on by Richard Epstein. I lived in New York for some time and had the blessing to actually be able to attend some of these. It's just different debates over different topics. It's mostly a lot of libertarian-minded people, libertarian-identified people, but he brings in other people as well, Democrats, independents, Republicans, to talk about socio-political issues with a tie towards economics. And it's been some very good stuff, and there's a lot of their content online that you can watch it as well. If you're in New York City, they normally do one when the season is on, something like once every couple of weeks or once a week or something. They have them scheduled. You can find them online, and there's a lot of good information there. I'll probably go and watch this debate after I finish recording this. Okay, back to the article. Without IP laws, the entrepreneur is not able to sit back and collect rent on his innovation. As his competitors are on the move to reverse engineer and improve it, he's forced to continually innovate, expand operations, and satisfy the consumers even more in order to keep his business afloat. With IP laws, however, there is no competitive pressure for the entrepreneur to continue improving his innovation. As the state blocks his competitors from reverse engineering his innovation, this entrepreneur is effectively granted a monopoly on the sector. As time goes by, the losses become overwhelming and most competitors go out of business. The sector becomes monopolized by a single entity. A great example of an entrepreneur who innovated, had a pioneer advantage, and due to IP laws managed to create a monopoly is Steve Jobs of Apple, his company. Steve innovated with the iPhone and revolutionized the smartphone industry, causing the absolute downfall of Nokia, at the time the largest smartphone manufacturer. This is a practical demonstration of how pioneer advantages generate creative destruction. However, due to IP laws, other entrepreneurs weren't able to improve or replicate the iPhone. This unfortunate reality resulted in a creative stagnation as Apple sat back and was relieved of being efficient by state law. This monopolization of an idea due to state intervention resulted in the cartelization of the smartphone industry and an absurd concentration of wealth in Apple. Without IP laws, Apple would have still grown and profited considerably, and Nokia would still have been knocked down. But other entrepreneurs would have been able to improve on the iPhone and replicate it, applying considerable competitive pressure to Apple. This would have birthed a new, freer environment and would have never led to such a concentration of wealth in Apple. The company probably would have still been big, but nowhere near as big as it is now, nor as creatively stagnant. In summary, a pioneer's advantage is the temporal head start that an entrepreneur has after innovating, which grants him considerable time to build wealth and market share before his knowledge spreads to other entrepreneurs and they themselves start improving on and replicating the innovation. It goes without saying that this ultimately benefits the consumers and society at large the most. And again, this was by Bernardo da Costa. So yeah, what are your thoughts on what was said here? Some of these times I give some thoughts on the topic ahead of time, and when I actually read the article, a lot of the things that I was saying are there, but then that just shows I'm kind of on the right path, thinking I'm okay with that, just putting it in different ways. So what are your thoughts about what was written here, what was said here? Have you thought of this thing about the people having that competitive advantage, that the knowledge quintillion effect? Did you know this? Were you aware of this? Parts in the world right now are facing inflation in different ways, in part due to the trillions and trillions of dollars that were injected into the markets by different central banks and governments and things like that. We're going to see a lot of effects coming from that. Now, with the information age, people are moving to different ways of doing business, different ways of making money, where a lot of people are making most of their life simply by just sharing information, sharing knowledge, passing on directions to things, going away from actually creating physical goods. Some of the wealthiest people don't actually physically create any new thing. It's just ideas being passed around. So there is a big question of this. Now talking about the IP things, I have a lot of questions with the Communist Party of China, the Chinese Communist Party, and there is some issue in China with the IP laws. They're like, yeah, we don't care. You come here, you build something in our country. If you work in our country, you have to have probably some CCP member in your board, and then yeah, your IP laws. No, we're just going to take that. We're going to build it ourselves. We're going to build it in a different way. Will that actually have some kind of effect of breaking this monopoly that some companies have by them chasing the cheaper labor that they have in China, chasing that market of a third of the world's population and things like that, trying to get to that market? Will that kind of take away this advantage that they had while operating in the West under those protections of those laws? Could it be a situation where maybe China takes some of these things and they say, okay, now we have them. Like, I don't know, when China comes out and works in the West, do the Chinese companies, when they might borrow something, might learn something from an innovator or a company that comes from abroad that works there, and then they adopt that. Sometimes they'll start adopting that technique and then they'll kick that company out. But even if they don't do that, when they start taking their product made by their Chinese companies to the international market, do they then go under the same IP protection laws that they violated in order to learn that information? I don't know, but I think in some cases they just say that they take the thing and then they say, okay, now we're working in interior. We're going to monopolize our local market because we want to have also certain controls on these apps, on these businesses. We want to control the kind of marketing that's done with this. We want to control the kind of people that are targeted with this, the way they use this. So they'll adopt their own way of doing things and things like that. And of course, they also want to get the profits from it, the financial profits from the use and sell of this actual service. So let me know what you think about that, because that might just give me a bit of a different take. There's some good and some positives about different things. In general, I'm just really against this commie type of stuff, but there could be some positives to what the Chinese Communist Party is doing in that sense of kind of breaking up the intellectual property racket or cartels, the cartelization that goes on there. I think that's something that we can realize. He used the Apple as an example here, and just the amount of money that you can get with some of these things. As I mentioned, my whole objection is people just seem to monopolize certain things and say, we're going to do this in this kind of way, and we're not even going to use this thing, or this is such a small part of the thing that we do, but we think it might be a key part, so we're going to keep this away from other people. But that is definitely something that I think you can tell. I'm an Mac bro. I'm an Apple bro, whatever they call them. I have an iMac from 2008 that I still use. My laptop is a MacBook Pro. I've been using that since 2012. The phone that I'm using is a 6 Plus. I've been using that since I don't know what year that one was, but it's maybe 2014. So for me, I've been using Apple products, but I also use them for a long time. Maybe I don't think it's just simply my financial constraints, but I don't understand why people just keep buying new ones. And it's for there's a prestige about certain products. I think it's become more, they're selling more on the name of Apple. You have that design, you have that look. But the actual changes have been incremental. I think the last time was like, oh, I really want that. When I saw the new, the pill, the little black kind of like circle thing where it's just like a huge, powerful machine. And I'm thinking, okay, now that if I want to upgrade to doing the 3D type of art, the 3D type of design, the really storytelling, going into gaming and things like that, it would make sense to get a rig like that. Because now when I publish some of these videos, it takes a lot longer to do it. I can tell the fan on my laptop is struggling. I've replaced the battery and things like this. But then there's the other aspect of PCs that was already in that industry, the PCs and things like that. There was a lot more competition in there. And with the PC market, there's a lot more flexibility in what you can do with the machines. You can build your own PCs. You can alter things and things around. You can be, okay, I'm going to build it to the specs that I want. I'm going to switch this thing around and have the main core, the main skeleton of it, but keep switching in the graphics card, keep switching in the RAM, keep switching out these other parts, and you build up with that thing. So you might have an investment to begin with at the start, but over time you're doing different things. With Apple, that doesn't necessarily exist. I remember when I first found Apple products when I was doing my undergrad, and they had those colorful computers and in the background and things like the different colors. And that was before they had really gotten into the phone market. I think even when they tried to do iPhone, the iPhone tried to come out first. And I think back then they already had I remember the iPod, which was kind of the thing like that, but just for music by itself. And that was one of the precursors to it. I don't know if y'all remember this. Different ages are going to be listening to this, but it's not too old of a thing. I think most of the people listening to this content would be familiar, would have already been born by the time that they had iPods. But there definitely has been a change. I think there has been a change when they've just figured out how much money they can make off of this. This keeps selling people, especially when it comes to phones. Most of the people who are using these phones are doing some selfies. They're doing a little computer. Maybe they're surfing the web. They might be using some apps to do some things that help them with organize their life. But to have that urge to just I need to upgrade because the RAM has changed from 10% or it's 2% more powerful. I'm like, you don't really get that much of a difference with the changes in the actual hardware in these phones over a certain limited amount of time. It's not going to change so much for you to surf the internet. It might be macroseconds that do it, but then maybe if you do it so much, it loads up at the time. I don't understand outside of just having the prestige of having this phone and being caught up in this consumerism cycle that some people have. And the marketing is excellent for that. They've done that. And do y'all think there's a significant difference with the innovation and abilities of Apple when it comes to their computers versus when it comes to their phones? What are your thoughts on that? Now, there's some issues with the phones. This is also a great channel, Louis Rossman. He has this Apple repair shop. He repairs other kind of computers. I think he focuses mostly on Apple. And was living in New York City, and he became kind of big during the Wall Street bets type of time. He was just explaining what was happening with it. But he's continued, and he does really good things. And he's been supporting this right to repair movement because with Apple, they have this thing where you have to go to the Apple store in order to fix the things. Even with the camera, they have this thing. If you don't go to an official Apple retailer or reseller, or rebuilder, things like that, to get certain parts of your phone fixed, they have some built-in things that will actually just shut down your camera. So there are things like this that are kind of pernicious. Like, I mean, is that really a cool thing to do? I think it's better when you purchase the actual thing, you can have the ability to actually own it and run it. But there is an aspect of this where they want to protect those things. So Nokia or something can't just buy the phone and just break it down. But I think Nokia could probably still buy the phone, break it down, but maybe they have a system where if you break it down in that sense, there's going to be some aspects while you break it down that are going to make it null and void, not going to be able to work anymore. But they have that extra monopolization saying you have to come back to us and only the people that we approve in order to fix the things. Now you have markets like here in Nairobi, Kenya, where some people are starting to get Apple products, but it's taken some time for them to actually be official resellers. I've had an experience with one reseller that I'm not quite sure. I got my battery substituted, and when you go to an official reseller battery place, it's supposed to be a battery that returns it to like the original battery lifetime. That definitely did not happen. Earlier on, when I was in Nairobi, these resellers hadn't been established yet. There isn't necessarily a location where you can repair some of your Apple products and get other things. But then that thing has slowly started to grow. But in a market like this in Nairobi also, China and the Chinese market and Chinese producers have come in. Oppo is one company that's pretty much just a copy of Apple. The products themselves, I've seen some people use those products, and they're definitely nowhere as close to as good as Apple, but the UI, the UX is kind of the same. The look of the phones are kind of the same, but you can tell it's not up to the same standard. Even if you think that Apple is not as high of the standard as other companies, that are out there, the Samsungs, the Motorola's back in. Even Nokia is still making phones. It's definitely not as major, as big as it was in the market back when the iPhone started coming out, but they're still back into it, and you have developing markets where you have these other companies and these other places from other countries. They don't really have as monopolized. They don't have the prestige and market share as Apple does, and that's also in part due to the price point of Apple. When you look at some of these developing countries and these other developing emerging markets, people just can't afford the Apple. And especially there isn't that much of, I think, a prestige of having the Apple phone, like walking around being seen with the Apple logo. It doesn't have that much social prestige to going with it. It's more you have a phone, it works, I can call you on it, and that's pretty much it. In fact, if anything, I think in this kind of market, the people who are targeting these lower price point phones, these more simple phones, are the people who are getting more success. Now, with a company like Nokia, it's gone through different leadership type of things. I don't think it's the same sort of institution that was there. I think it was a European, somewhere in Scandinavia, maybe Iceland. I'm not quite sure. But I even remember when I first came back to Kenya, after coming back some time back, it was like 2007 around there. The first time I'd come back after being out of the country for years in the United States, and I went to Europe. And anyway, but I came back, and one of my first phones I got here locally was a Nokia 1100. Why am I saying 1100? It's 1100. That famous one with the brick where it's like impossible to break and things like this, and it falls down on the ground, breaks the ground type of thing. It has that, remember that green kind of screen with the black kind of text on it, and there's been a recent retread of that, kind of an updating of it with different kind of colors, the 3300, but this is now done by a different company in a different way. I think it's more for like a nostalgia thing. I saw some article here, like, hey, it's not the same phone, it's different kind of people, it's just like a nostalgia, don't bring people back. And the person was focusing like, oh, they're more interested in having something like the new Galaxy or the new iPhone, because that's what they're focused on from that market. I think it was somebody who wrote for Wired, so that's writing somewhere in Europe or United States of America. But here in Kenya, I think they're okay with just getting that kind of colored phone. You get it for cheap, you get it for a fraction of the price, maybe a tenth or less of the price as you would with an Apple, and you're not really doing anything else on it besides that. So there's still space in markets for this, and maybe that globalization of things is actually going to increase some competition in some places that had been stagnant. Some places that, okay, we have a monopoly in this region, and we don't necessarily have the protections in other places yet. And that's one of the things here. When it comes to copyright and IP type of stuff, we'll see matatus, to these buses, public transit, transportation systems here, they'll have different spray paint and things on their side, like people's rappers or musicians or movies or things like this. And they haven't had the actual, if you try to do that in the United States of America, pretty much, you can get sued for using that. You'll see certain schools being advertised and have like Disney characters on it. They're not officially licensed by Disney, but they'll have that on there. So you have that kind of thing there. At least that's when it comes to copyright. Now, copyright is slightly different from IP. It's kind of the same idea of focusing on who can use this idea in a certain way. I think copyright is more like they do it and then you can use it, and if somebody else uses it, they give you some of the profits. You can kind of lease out the usage of that thing. Whereas IP is more like, I have the IP of this, I'm the only person who should be able to actually do this. People don't normally lease out IP, because once you put it out to somebody else, you normally kind of get to use that. And there's also copy part of it, where copyright itself is more like written things, visual things that can just be duplicated in a certain way. Like, for example, if you had some method of blowing glass, I don't think you'd be able to copyright the method, but if you write it down and explain it, that could be an intellectual property in using that method. But since the application of that method is an actual craft, is an actual action, I don't necessarily think it would be considered copyright. Just like if you have some small little part in an iPhone and things like this, you can use IP for that small part because you have to create that part. Even if you just have the writing of explaining how to do it, it's the actual creation of that particular part in that particular way that would be protected to that company. And nowadays, I think there's certain things that are outside of, they're in public domain now. The copyright has lapsed. And I think with a lot of these things, creative things, they normally have certain years. You sign up with this company, you sign up with a certain government, and it says, like, you have 50-year protection on this. These things coming up, like some of the comic book characters that are being used by Marvel, they're going to lapse in their copyright and become something in public domain. But you can renew some of these. Like, I think Disney has kept renewing Mickey Mouse, for example. Now you have something like the great classical musicians. That stuff, the music that they wrote, the Beethovens, the Mozarts, the Chopins, that the music they wrote is in the public domain. Like if the Nairobi Philharmonic decides to put on a performance of it, they don't have to pay Beethoven's family or trust money to actually get the sheet music. But then once they've actually created the song and recorded it and put it out in an album, I think they can charge for it. And then I won't just be able to just use their version playing of it for free. I think that's how that would work on something like that. But then I think I'll wind this down with all the rambles. This has been that article. I'll find other articles. There's other articles that I have specifically even for the Mises Institute that I want to do in this series, is to give some thoughts. And this is also just stuff so I can know how I'm going to go forward with my creative endeavors, go forward with my business endeavors, and try to get more people's ideas on these things. I do believe that there will be more innovation if you have the more sharing of ideas. People will be inspired to do things. Like I said, that idea comes to them and someone's like, if I just do the same thing this person is doing, how unique is my product really going to be? And with that, I know there's other people out there making this content and you have limited time and you've chosen to come here and listen to this. So guys, gals, and everything else in between, thank you all very much for listening. Let me know what you think about intellectual property rights. On the screen, as this video has been going, I think when I do things from the Mises Institute, I'll be doing different anyone but K speed drawings. If I don't think of something specific to go with it, I think I'll be doing the anyone but K speed drawings. It's probably going to be Rothbard, probably going to be Mises on there. I might put somebody else who have done them. and I'll have that on the screen as I do these ones on the video versions. And part of the content that I do, I think I'm trying to do a little kind of different things by doing some content, having a visual going with it, and the structure that I'm doing in these things. I enjoy doing these things for now, but definitely I'm somebody who's interested in making some money on this, making it more profitable and financial in other ways. If you value this content, you can support in different ways. There's links below. You can find links there to support and donations and things like that. And there's also a merchandise store where you can get these people and a lot of other people in the Anyone But K series. And one of the most successful things on that store is the Sowell 3. And Thomas Sowell is a Chicago school economist, but he also has some relations. A lot of people in the Austrian school appreciate the things that he says. Really sensible, really cool guy. Really enjoy Thomas Sowell. And he has 3 questions that he asks people on the political left about certain issues that supposedly knock down many of the things. I think econ applies to other parts in the world, and I try to use these in a lot of these kind of things that I do and apply them to the topics that I've been speaking about. Now with this one, it's economics, so it's going to really apply to it. And those 3 questions are compared to what, at what cost, and what solid proof do you have? So now this one we're talking about innovation with the whole situation of intellectual property. So compared to what? It is hard to say because so many places in the West have this IP laws for some time. But can you look at certain fields and say, okay, this field has a lot more control on the means of production, on the things that are produced in this industry, and you think how much IP is actually in this one, how much innovation is in this industry? Have you seen some sort of relationship of this company, this industry has 50% intellectual property on the things that are actually done, on the means of creating the product. This industry has 5%. And do you see there being more innovation in the industry that has the 5% versus the industry that has the 50%? I think that's one way you can kind of compare these things. Because there is this thing that happens in econ and just happens in life. Those unknown costs of lost opportunities when you don't do these things. And that's at what cost. I think that will be a good question to switch to here. At what cost? I think when you have the people who are limiting that, as I said, if the person themselves keeps that, they'll keep focusing on this one thing, and they themselves might have had some more things in their mind to innovate on that product. But since they can limit it, since they can already have that state protection to monopolize maybe version 1.2, in their mind they might have had up to version 5 that would have been a lot better for them and the rest of the people, but they stick at 1.2 because they can monopolize and benefit off of that and profit off of that. Yet we have lost the chance to get all these other things. As I said, the other companies will come in and they'll say, we'll invent on this, we'll innovate on this in order to build up on what you're doing. And I think that's something I think we as creatives and as consumers, as a society, definitely lose when we have people who have the ability to just stagnate on one level and just keep that one thing. It's okay, this is going to be mine, in that situation. Okay, what solid proof do you have? What solid proof do you have that taking down intellectual property laws would actually stifle innovation? What solid proof do you have that monopolies and things like this, some of these things that most people seem to be against, would exist without the state, which is the ultimate monopoly? A lot of people are like, yeah, we need the state to break up monopolies because monopolies are bad, but the state is a institution defined by its monopoly of legal violence over a given area that has essentially monopolized many different markets, and it has the main market of all that you can monopolize is setting the laws that regulate all these other markets. So when it comes down to it, who's setting the laws that regulate themselves in that market? And I think you find in many cases, they're the ones breaking these things because they can set it and they can say, what are you going to do? What police are you going to come and get? You and what military are going to come and tell us not to do the thing that we're doing when we're monopolizing and say, oh, I'm going to hold this person accountable? No, I'm not going to hold this person accountable. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change this law that does this thing with this other people, and it's going to give them an advantage to this. And then when they get that advantage, I'm going to buy stocks for them. And what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Oh yeah, you can follow me on Twitter and you can have an account by just doing the different stock trades that I do and also get like 10 times, 7 to 10 times better than the best people in the markets because like, yeah, I have that inside kind of knowledge. So these are the people we're supposed to trust that have our best interests in mind. It's not even something uniquely about politicians. Yes, it does select for a certain sort of mentality, but the system is set up there. If, for example, you can say, okay, I have this invention. If I have monopoly, if I'm the only person making this thing, I can make $200. If everybody's making this, I'll make $100. For the average person, if you told them, okay, right now, you're able to make $200 next year if you're the only one making this. If everybody's making it, you can make the $100. If you pay this person $99, then for the next year, with the same amount of energy you'd have spent to make that $200 or $100, you can make $101. Most people would say, okay, I'll do that for that $101. And when it comes to politicians, it's not that low amount of money, and the gap is normally not that high. So yeah, I'm going to lobby these people in order to actually achieve this amount of money. And even better, after some time, these people will not even be in the market. So maybe after a few years of doing this, of me being the only person making this thing, those other people won't even be there anymore. And then I won't have to even pay this politician anymore. I won't have to pay this person that $99 anymore. I'll just be able, you pay them that one time for that $99, and that protection lasts many years. So you pay them that $99 that 1 year, and then you have the protection for the next 5 years. And then the next person comes around, okay, now you have to re-up. This is a different politician comes in, then I'm going to have to pay this person another 99 in order for them to maintain this protection that's in my industry. This is kind of setting up a pernicious system that's in there, and it stifles innovation, it stifles different industries in different ways. And I think this is one of the things that is starting to hold back the West. Despite this system existing, you still have a lot of innovation there, and I think other places are catching up, and other places are starting to be more competitive, and we'll see what happens now that we're truly a globalized society. So that's kind of it with this one. Thank you all very much, guys, gals, and everything else in between for listening to this. Let me know if there's other kind of things that you would want in this kind of system, in this kind of method. I have a lot of different other content on the channel. I'm working on different things, working with a few friends in order to just create more content like this where we're discussing these things. A series is coming up where I'm going to be discussing human action, going through the book Human Action by Ludwig von Mises. So I'll be reading the book, and I'm actually contemplating just actually reading every single word of the book and breaking it down, trying to understand it, because I don't think this stuff is convoluted. It might be a bit complicated, but I don't think it's even that confusing. I think it's just we haven't been taught this, and in part because one of the systems that has been monopolized, ostensibly monopolized by the state, is the schooling indoctrination complex, and they don't want to teach you legit economics in there because you'll start questioning the institution of the school itself, how it's paid, how it's run, why it exists, why they would actually think of you. You're not the customer in that situation, you're the product, and you're a product, or you're actually a widget. You're a tool being created for someone else. You're not even a product. They're manufacturing bits for a greater machine when you're going through the schooling indoctrination complex. So they're not teaching you to be flexible and work in different things. They just need you to fit into certain places. And then those machines that you're a part of, that's the product that those people are purchasing. Your replacement parts for the product that the politicians and the state actually controls. That's how I think about in that system. So I might have my biases with those things, but let me know what you thought about this. Thank you all very much for listening. More on these things coming. I think the next one I'll be doing in this series is there's an interesting article that I saw on Mises Institute. I've bookmarked this for some time. It's about the relationship between the colonials and the people that were living in South America when they got there, and the different dynamics and different stories around it. So look forward to that. By the time you listen to this, that might already be out as well. Till next time.